In the past, in Parashat Haazinu, we talked about the concept of a poem. We also dove deep into some of the psukim. This year, we also decided to take one pasuk and try to understand it, because as with poems, they have many different meanings, many different levels. The poet has some great ideas he tries to express in these simple single words. And as we saw in the simple pasuk, there's so many different levels to understand the Hebrew language and what Moshe Rabbeinu is actually saying.
Yeah, and we dove into one of these main concepts of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we see all through the tefillah of Rosh Hashanah, and we see in our Parsha the concept of kinyan, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the one who acquired us. And we wondered, what does that even mean? We know what a king is, we know what a father is, but acquiring, what does that mean to our relationship? How does that impact how we see our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu?
Exactly. And again, as we always do, we dove deep into the Hebrew language because there's so many meanings to these simple words that Moshe uses over here. We tried to understand them. We used Rashi, we used unveiling, and of course, we also connected it to Yom Kippur, Abba Aleinu L'Tova, Bezrat Hashem, on Monday. Hope you enjoy it. Take a look. So new year, new week, Parashat Haazinu. We just began the year, but as usual, we're almost finishing the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu tells this song to Am Yisrael. In the past years, we discussed what is this song about? Why does Moshe tell over a song? We also talked about the end of the Parsha, and one year we also dove deep into a few of the psukim. This year, what I want to talk about again is dive deep into one of the psukim that Moshe says in the song that he sings, in the poem that he tells over to Am Yisrael, because as it goes with poems, every single word is extremely deep. And what I want to do is take one pasuk and try to understand it on the different levels and the different meanings that it has. And in the beginning of the parasha, we find the pasuk of Hala Hashem tigmelu zot, am naval velo chacham, halo hu avicha kanecha, hu ascha vechoneneka. And when you try to translate this pasuk into English, it gets a little bit more complicated because there are a few words over here that have different meanings. And when you look in Rashi, for example, even Rashi tells you that these words have different meanings to them. For example, when you look at the concept of hu avicha kanecha, he's your father who acquired you, who bought you. Rashi says that kanecha isn't necessarily from the meaning of buying, acquiring. He also brings other meanings to this word. So what does this mean? What does this concept of hu avicha kanecha is? What is this pasuk telling us? What is Moshe Rabbeinu trying to describe in this pasuk in the poem?
Yeah, I think that word kana, is very interesting. First of all, in its context, because we see the word used again later on as Rashi sort of hints to us also, we see the concept of ken being a nest. So we have ken being a nest. Rashi mentions also it being a tikkun, when we fix something, when we correct something. That's also the ken. We know it's also acquiring. And it's also interesting, but in our context of the days we're in, of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Tshuva, because we see the concept of acquiring quite a bit. Lekonea vadav badin, we said in Rosh Hashanah, which is a very interesting thing, because I get the idea of the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being a father and son. Hu avicha, he's your father, the son, the relationship. We know what that means. We also know the concept of a king, of God running the world, God being the leader of the world, the malchut, the concept of lehamlichet HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the impact he has on every aspect of our lives and on the world. We also know the concept of, from Shir HaShirim, of a relationship of a husband and a wife, and the love relationship. I get all that, but he acquired you? What does that even mean? What am I supposed to feel that I was acquired by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What is defining the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being something that was purchased by HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually add to our avodat Hashem, to our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And I think if we think about all these places where we have the term ken, whether it's kinyan, purchase, whether it's letaken, to fix something, whether it's building a nest, or you know what, whether it's even zaken, where we saw in Daf Yomi not so long ago, the concept of an older person is zaken, zekana chokhmah, someone who acquired chokhmah. And we actually bring the pasuk of kanani reshit darko, that Hashem acquired me, again that term. So I think what's unique about all of them is, as opposed to a father and son relationship, where it's part of nature. You know, when the child was born, the father didn't know exactly who this child was going to be. He does his best to educate him, but this is a situation that in some sense they're both born into. The child is the child, and the father didn't choose that child, and the child definitely didn't choose that father. It just is. It's how nature is. But as opposed to this, all the other examples are things that you make a choice about. You put effort into, you put money into. It's something that you invest in. A kinyan, we know also halachically, needs two main things. One is da'at. I have to have knowledge about what I'm doing. It can't just happen. I have to have knowledge about it, and I have to do some action. I work at it. I do something for it. And if we think about it, all of these are the same. When I metaken, I'm fixing something, I'm putting effort into it. And we know in Chazal, the term letaken is more than fixing something broken. We metaken a seuda. When I set up a meal, I'm metaken, I'm setting it up, I'm putting effort into preparing that meal. We know how much we've been preparing for meals lately. So tikkun is something we put effort into, we prepare. Also, zaken, someone who's wise. We can have someone who's young and wise, someone who's born a genius. That's not a zaken. A zaken is someone who's older and is wise. He's wise because of all the years, all he's acquired over the years. He wasn't born that way. It just didn't happen. It's something that he built over time. He acquired it. And if you've ever seen a bird putting a nest together, the bird could just sit on the tree. The bird goes and takes branch after branch after branch, puts them all together, each time coming back with one little branch until it builds that nest. That nest is a lot more than just that regular branch. It's something that they put effort to and built a home. That's the concept of kinyan. And this leads to two different things. First of all, a special love. We know that something that someone put effort into, you have a special connection to. There's a special love there. In Chazal, who bring a midrash explaining this, they talk about chibayetera. There's a special love. Chazal talk about Yerusha, someone who had many, many fields. He got Yerusha, and that's great. And he's happy about them. But then there was one that he actually acquired. He actually worked on. He worked to get. And that one is the one that he had a special connection to. But then there's the other aspect, which is the side of the thing itself. We know that kinyan has a very deep connection. There's the concept of kinyan haguf. The thing itself belongs to the one who acquires it. It's not just like an agreement. We talk about a covenant between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's, we have an agreement between us. Kinyan is so much more. We are his. Our whole essence is his. And that's a very deep relationship. So I think that's what this term is teaching us. There's Avicha. He's your father. Huascha, as the pasuk continues. He's your father. He created you. But then he's also Konecha. Vayechonenecha. He prepared you. This didn't just happen. He went down with you in Egypt. He brought you out of Egypt. He took you through the desert. He went through all the troubles of all your complaints and all of that. He stuck there with you, as the song goes and describes. This is another level of that relationship. This is a relationship of choice. And I think a great way to see this is the concept that we again learned lately in Kiddushim of kinyan, that the Kiddushin of Isha is Haisha Niknet. The woman is being acquired. What does that even mean? Why do we have that term? But if we think about it, Adam Arishon was created female and male together. Only then they were separated into two. So they started as naturally being together as one. But once they were separated into two, now comes the new stage. And this stage is they have to choose. They have to choose to come together again as one. That choice, that kinyan of acquiring that relationship. You don't just have it as is. You don't just have it. It builds a whole other level, a level where I invest in that relationship, a level where that relationship isn't taken for granted. It's something that I dedicate myself to.
Exactly. I think that point is the relationship that I dedicate myself to, because there's something being built here. There's a process that's going on over here. This is what maybe Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to emphasize in this pasuk, because this pasuk is telling Am Yisrael that what are you thinking to yourselves? You're thinking to yourself that you can go off and do whatever you want and not listen to the Torah, because God is your king, God is your father, and no matter what, he will always be your father, and you are inherited to him, or you are his nation, and he can't be a king without his nation. You have to remember that he's also Kanecha. He acquired you. Huascha. He also made you. And this making, this kinyan, this Kanecha, like you were saying, and like Rashi emphasizes, has different levels to it. And these different levels mean that there's a lot of hard work put into this relationship, kivyachol, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's side. Kivyachol, there's a lot of work from his side put into this to tell us that this relationship has to be worked on from our side. And maybe this is the beginning of the pasuk. Hala Hashem tigmelu zot, am naval velo chacham. You doing this to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, am naval velo chacham. What does this naval velo chacham mean? Again, naval in Hebrew, and especially in the Torah, has different meanings. We find it different times. But first of all, if you look at Unkelus says something totally else. He doesn't even translate the word naval. He says that you did not use the Torah and you did not learn from the Torah Torah in order to become wise and to understand what you have to do in this world. And therefore, taking this understanding from unkelus and looking at this word naval, we could understand it again on different levels. First of all, we find the shorish of naval by Bnei Yaakov when they come back to Shechem and they say, how can this despicable thing be happening to us, be happening to our family? Nevela Stabi said there's an outrage over there from Bnei Yaakov for this terrible thing that they did. That's one level of nevela. Then we find the navol tibol by Moshe when Yitro comes to Moshe and tells them, you're going to wear yourself out. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You might be working, you might be toiling away, but that work is going to result in you not becoming stronger, but actually becoming weaker and not being able to work more. Navol tibol from the understanding of to wither, a plant, a flower that withers. And then we have the shorish of nun bet lamed of naval. We find it in Sefer Vaikra, of course, in the word nevela, in the word carcass. The dead animal that is tameh, what should be done with it? What do you do with it? And looking at these three understandings of what this shorish of nun bet lamed is, of naval is, taking it back to what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, looking at unkelus, what unkelus translated to not using the Torah that we got, this is what Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Am Yisrael, just like you were saying, there is a two-way relationship here that you have to work on in order to nourish this relationship, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our Father, right? He's our King, but He also acquired us, and we have to be worthy of that acquisition. We have to acquire it ourselves. We have to work on it ourselves, because if we are not going to work on it, if we're not going to do what we're supposed to do, if we're going to do the despicable things, if we're going to do the terrible things, if we're going to do the nevelah things, just like by Bnei Yaakov, then nabol tibol, then we will wither, then we will wear out, then we will fall apart, then our nation will fall apart. This will end up resulting in being a nevelah, in being a carcass, in being just like all the other nations, without anything special within us, without that special message that we have to bring into the world, without that special good that we have to bring to the entire world, where the entire world is waiting for it. Maybe this is what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying over here, because again, this poem, there's a reason Moshe Rabbeinu ends off the Torah with the poem, because when we have a poem, the poet always uses specific words that do have different levels to them, different meanings for them, to describe different ideas, to describe a more general idea, a more general concept. And maybe this is what Moshe Rabbeinu is doing over here, telling Am Yisrael, you're going to be doing this to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only that this is not a smart thing to do, that this is a lo chacham, this is also a nevelah, this is also a terrible thing to do. This is a betrayal in this relationship that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you know, when Moshe Rabbeinu uses one word to describe different meanings, different levels of meanings, we have the opposite side, meaning sometimes we can't find the words in order to express our relationship, in order to express our love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to express our desire to the Torah, and we have to use many words, many ways to describe that relationship. Like we find on Yom Kippur itself, we have the piyut of Anu Amecha, which is based on the Midrash in Shir HaShirim. We describe our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in many different ways, in many different aspects. We are your nation, you are our king, you are the uncle, we are the wife, you are the shepherd, we are the sheep. Many different ways how we see our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because sometimes we can't find the words to describe what we want to describe. And you know, every year during the davening of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, these different words come out of the davening and kind of stick with you. And for me, specifically during Rosh Hashanah this year, it was the words in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei where we say, Ten kavod le'amecha. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give the honor back to Am Yisrael, Tila li'irecha, give some praise to the people who follow you. And then we ended off with saying, Ufitchon peh la'mayachalim lach, and help open the mouth to the ones who want you, the ones who are hoping for you. And in the past year, after what has been going on in our nation for the past year, these words kind of got a new meaning for me, because words got a new meaning. Because when we look around, words have become so easy to play around with. It's so easy to take a word that describes A and twist it around and turn it to describe B. And sometimes you just find yourself lost of words because you don't know which word to use, because if you want it to mean A, it ends up meaning B, and you really don't know what words you could use in order to express what you're feeling. And maybe this is what we're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I was thinking to myself during Rosh Hashanah, maybe this is what also shofar is about. Maybe this is why we end off Yom Kippur with the shofar. I always also wondered, why do we end off Yom Kippur with the shofar? Is this kind of a reminder for Rosh Hashanah? Oh, by the way, every day during Elul in the morning, we blow the shofar. Rosh Hashanah, we blew it a lot of times. This is the last time. Let's say goodbye to the shofar before we put it away back in the cupboard. But you know what? Maybe this is why we end Yom Kippur with the shofar, because in the end of the day, sometimes there is no words. There's nothing to say. We don't know what to say. And sometimes you want to say something, but if you say it, other people are going to understand it differently, because the words have been twisted so many times. They've been so twisted around, no matter what you say, you won't be understood correctly. So what we are asking from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is pitchon peh. Just help us open our mouth, because the only thing we want to do is, in the end of the day, we want to pray to you. No matter if you are the king and we are your nation, no matter if you are the shepherd and we are the sheep, no matter if you are the master and we are the slaves, doesn't matter. All it matters is that we want this relationship, and we are asking you to write us in the book of life, asking you to help us have a good new year. And even if we can't find those words for us. Try to understand just from our desire, just from our will, understand from us what we're wanting, and in Mitzvah Hashem, we should all have a happy new year.
Amen, amen. And you mentioned this being a slave of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as one of them. It's interesting because the concept of a slave, we sometimes think of it being related to king, right? A king and the slave. That's not what it shows up there. King and the nation. The slave actually is the one that goes together always with acquiring, right? You acquire a slave. That's the relationship. That's the other side of acquiring, meaning the concept of being an Eved Hashem that we use so often is the one that goes together with the concept of kinyan, because as you said, the effort is a two-sided effort. Eved Hashem means I'm dedicated to this because this relationship is something more than just, I don't just take it for granted. It's something I'm invested in because HaKadosh Baruch Hu invested in me. This is who I am. This is my essence. This isn't just some agreement between us. My whole self belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm yours. I'm Kanani. You invested in me. Make this investment be worth it and reach its true goal.
Beautiful, beautiful, very good. Bezrat Hashem, out of this Shabbat Shuvah and Bezrat Hashem Yom Kippur, we really should all be signed in the book of life, and all of us, all of Am Yisrael, and the entire world should have a good year. There's a lot of things happening around the world. We should really pray and daven and hope for a wonderful, a happy, and a sweet new year for all of us everywhere we are. I'll just remind the viewers again that in the past couple of years in Parashat Haazinu, we discussed Moshe is told to go look at the land. Why is it so important for Moshe to look at the land? Why is Hashem shoving it in his face, like telling him, oh, you're not going in, but go look at it? That's not a nice thing to do to Moshe. Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanding him to look at the land? There's some very important lessons over there. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like it, share it around, comment on YouTube, and of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and help us grow the channel. And Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom, and Gmar Chatima Tova.
Shabbat Shalom, Gmar Chatima Tova, and Mitzvah Hashem. We'll talk again next week.